when you look at people for 20 years, you get a pretty good idea of what's driving the pathology, what's driving the disease, or what is not being addressed. More to the point, what is not being looked at. I mean, this was the second day I made this remedy called Liberation. I took it with this 9 gems. In life, I'd had this very intense girlfriend, and like it was a very intense relationship, and then we split up. Right, it was very abrupt, and we split up, never talked again. But somewhere in my psyche, in my body, in my field, somewhere there was this like, what would have happened had we stayed together? So in the dream, there she was next to me. She was like 9 months pregnant with my child, right? And she was about to give birth. And my body felt what it would have felt like had we stayed together. When I had this dream, and it was so real, it's like I felt something leave my body, like this weight of like, we don't have the tools whereby we can actually free ourselves. When an animal gets traumatized, it'll shake itself off and like let go of it. We don't do that. We just like go home and internalize it or dwell or fixate or get angry or something. What I've tried to do with these remedies, this Beyond Medicine range, is to create stuff that's strong enough for everyone to feel, so that everyone will get an effect. So what I'm trying to do with a lot of these is to give people an archetype of like what it feels like for life to be easy. And they say it takes 21 days to set up a pattern, and a bottle will normally last you like 4 weeks. So it's enough time to set up a new pattern of behavior. And then the body learns what it feels like to have things go your way. And then it's almost like you've almost learned it, so you don't need to keep taking it because the body knows what it is.
Greetings, seekers of ancient wisdom. Today we're joined by Dr. Adam Suzman from Beyond Medicine. This is ancient technologies that are updated and new and able to perform functions beyond normal medicine. We're very excited for the show. This is going to be packed with tons of useful information. So Dr. Suzman, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deepak. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Yeah, excited.
So, Dr. Suzman, we're very interested to understand how you ended up in this field, because you studied homeopathy and you practiced homeopathy for 2 decades or so, but you also went and studied Buddhist culture, some Hindu remedies, a whole range of different types of medicines around the world. So how did you get into this field of Beyond Medicine? Because you're making your own medicine, isn't it?
Okay, well, I studied in Australia, and then I spent a year in India after that, exploring various bits and pieces. And then I came back and I was practicing here for 20 years. But then it felt after a while that like the field of disease was like this, like a sea, and like I was just throwing little rocks into the sea all the time, and I would get effects and results, and like people would get better, but then they would slide back. And I realized that in order to be truly effective, to truly benefit mankind, you really need to address the root causes of a lot of diseases. And I know a lot of people say this is like, oh, you got to get to the root cause, but when you look at people for 20 years, you get a pretty good idea of what's driving the pathology, what's driving the disease, or what is not being addressed. More to the point, what is not being looked at to deal with, as an origin for a lot of the causes of disease. There's this one Indian homeopath said like the 3 causes of disease were hurry, money, and worry. And I was like, yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, but we're all subject to this kind of thinking. But when I looked at the first remedy I made as part of this Beyond Medicine system was a product called Liberation. And the main component of this is a substance called Navaratna, 9 gems, right? So it's basically 9 gems. Each gem has been burnt 100 times and turned into this like precious pearl, and then you get to consume this. And it was made by a 3rd century Buddhist alchemist called Nagarjuna. And the purpose of this medicine is to finish karma. Now, we think of karma as like what happened, right? But the other side of karma, like the other side of the coin of karma, is like what didn't happen. So if you imagine you have an event, right? And I mean, I saw this when I started taking this medicine. It was like a lot of things that happen, like you have a girlfriend and then you break up and it's quite abrupt, and then you don't know what would have happened. But somewhere in the body is this arrow that's like broken off, and the story hasn't been able to continue. So what happens with this is it kind of reconnects the arrow to the area that's somewhere in your chest, and it pulls it out. Now, not in a painful way, but in a way of completion. So we have a finish to the story, or an outcome. I just want to tell you the story because it shows you this very clearly. I mean, this was the second day I made this remedy called Liberation. I took it with this 9 gems. But so in life, I had this very intense girlfriend, and like it was a very intense relationship, and then we split up. Right, it was very abrupt, and we split up. Never talked again. She went off with my best friend. Like it was very messy, and I'd never spoken to her again. But somewhere in my psyche, in my body, in my field, somewhere there was this like, what would have happened had we stayed together? And I wasn't able to play this out because I never spoke to her. I never thought of it. So in the dream, there she was next to me. She was like 9 months pregnant with my child, right? And she was about to give birth. And my body felt what it would have felt like had we stayed together. Now, I mean, I've got a beautiful daughter now. With someone else, it was like, it all worked out fine. It was like, it would have been a disaster anyway. But when I had this dream, and it was so real, it's like I felt something leave my body, like this weight of like, this big question mark of like what could have been, what might have been. My body was able to feel it. And like in feeling this feeling of like, oh, that's what it would have felt like, I was able to let go of it. I literally felt something leave my body. And Carl Jung said that something done in a dream is somatically identical to something experienced in life. So if we have resolution in a dream, it's the same as resolving something with someone in life. And as I continue to take this medicine, this liberation, it literally worked through all my old relationships, then all my broken friendships, and then my family, and then acquaintances over like 9 months. Every day I would go to sleep and there would be a new chapter in the story. And it basically was saying like, okay, well, let's have a look at this person. Now, is there anything you need to say to them or them to you, right? Or do I want them closer? Do I want to finish it? Or do I want to change it up completely and have a new interaction with this person? So, an example of that was this friend of mine who betrayed me. In the dream, he was there giving me gifts. And I was like, thanks, I'll take the gifts. These are like war damages. You should give this to me because you behaved badly. But I still don't trust you. I still don't want to be your friend. But it was like me saying like, okay, now I'm able to let go of the anger I felt towards him, but I still choose not to be his friend. And like I'm closing that door forever. But that it felt, the image I had with taking this remedy, this liberation was, when I started taking it, it felt like I was on a boat, and the boat was loaded, and it was like childcare, too many patients, too many bills, too many responsibilities. And as I started like getting rid of all these old memories, it was like I was chucking concrete blocks over the side, right? And the boat was getting lighter and lighter in the water until I was like, oh wow, the boat's not drowning. I can actually see where I'm going, and now let me actually go back to where I want to go. And it felt like I was traveling back to times from the past where I could get to throw the skeletons overboard, but take the wisdom that I'd gotten from those areas, keep the wisdom integrated into my present time, into my state, while getting rid of the weight. And it just felt like I became so much lighter. It eventually felt like, oh, I'm a speedboat cruising around the ocean, going back to all the old ports of call to retrieve the jewels. There's this idea that memory is stored in the body. I think every major tradition now accepts this. I mean, where it is stored, that's a different thing. I mean, some people say in the brain. My personal belief is like the body is like the memory. Somewhere in the body, in some field or some resonant area, there's this chunk of frozen memory. And it felt like this remedy went and it just undid a little cap on the cell. It allowed the contents to release and then moved on to the next one. So, you know, but what was even more interesting with the substance is it wasn't just in dreams. So, you know, I would go to my local shopping center, and for about 4, 5, 6 months, every day I would literally run into someone that I knew from the past. And it was almost like the Truman Show. They were like waiting there, and then I would pass, they would come to life, and then I would interact with them, have a new interaction, and then move on. And it was like, okay, wow, my psyche is generating the scenario whereby I can see this person so that I can go through this process of like, say what I need to say, decide if I still like this person or I want to even hang out with them or be friends with them, or say, okay, well, my karma here is done, like no, you know, bad feelings either way, but like this chapter is closed, you know, and just to do that, just like, okay, well, let's get rid of that, let's chuck that out the window, and then leave space for new stuff. And I actually felt how my personal energy increased, how I became stronger, how I felt stronger, how I was less burdened. And the image I had there was, you know, whenever we come to an interaction, you know, we want to be clear. We don't want to be carrying a backpack full of rocks. And it felt like all these memories were backpacks full of rocks. And all it was stuff that was unexpressed, unknown, and unresolved primarily. You know, this state of like, well, you know, and this is partly the fault of the education system or, you know, culture, I guess, that we don't have the tools whereby we can actually free ourselves. You know, when an animal gets traumatized, it'll shake itself off and like let go of it. We don't do that. We just like go home and internalize it or dwell or fixate or get angry or something. And eventually we forget about it. But what this showed me was there was all this stuff that was forgotten, but not in a sense forgiven, you know, or it was unresolved, but it was still there somewhere. And as I said, I've done a lot of Buddhist stuff, and I was quite amazed that I had these huge holes in my, not holes, but like if you imagine the house as like your memory. It's like I went into my house and it was just like junk pouring out of all the rooms. It's like, wow, I left a lot of rubbish hanging around. And it wasn't even like it was bad stuff. It was just random stuff. I remember, I mean, I'm from Joburg originally, and like I went back to Joburg for a friend of mine's wedding, and I was taking this liberation. I was driving through the streets at night, and it was a full-on assault of memories. It was like memory, memory, memory. It was like every street that I've ever driven down or had memory in was coming back to me. And it was like, wow, this flood of memories was like, and it's not unpleasant either. You just realize that stuff gets stashed there. Like we put down, you know, we're laying down mud on the floor and we just never wash it off. This is just washing it off. And people think, oh, there's some hectic stuff, there's bad stuff. It wasn't even hectic or bad stuff. It was just like memories that were not taken out. You know, like there was, I just want to tell another story because it shows this quite clearly. So there was this woman in England who was taking this remedy liberation, and she'd been fighting with her parents for 10 years. And she literally hadn't spoken to them in 10 years. And she was driving home on the way to her small town, through their small town, because she was in the neighboring town, and her car breaks down like 50 meters from their house. So she's forced to go to their house to get help. She bangs on the door. The father sees her, bursts into tears. She bursts into tears. They both start hugging each other. They're crying. The mother's there crying. And in that 1 hour, with a flood of tears, like literally 10 years is washed away. Now, how did the psyche, it shows us the power of the psyche, that it was strong enough to manifest a situation where an external thing, like a car, broke down in just that position to force her to deal with this resolution. You know, it's like this other case of, I gave it to a friend of mine in Dubai, and she took it in the morning or in the night. The next day, 3 of her ex-boyfriends phoned her, like on the same day, like one after the other, bang, 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 out of the blue, just completely out of the blue. So obviously somewhere in her head, she was thinking like, maybe Johnny, maybe Joey, maybe Paulie, you know, somewhere there in her head, like, what if I get back together with him? And this was just the scenario, like, okay, here's Joey. No, okay, I know he's an ex. Here's Johnny. No, no, no. So she was able to work through these scenarios and put it to rest. And now she's got a beautiful relationship with a wonderful guy. So it was just literally these things we didn't quite put down. It's just saying like, okay, well, bring it to your attention, put it to rest. You know, the liberation's got a lot of ingredients, like it's got shungite as well, which is you probably know shungite, but it purifies water, right? And obviously the blood is made of water. So if it's purifying the water, it's purifying the blood. And in Chinese medicine, they say the blood carries mind. So it's literally purifying the mind. So as we're getting rid of this massive karmic weight from the past, it's flushing it from the body. And I mean, I've also put various bits and pieces in there just to make it more fun, you know, because, you know, there's this idea of like healing as or processing as being like it must be a heavy thing. It must be like if you're not crying or like, you know, this old view medicine must be bitter, must hurt you a little bit if it's going to be any good, you know. But, you know, my view is like we've all been through enough trauma. We've all been hurt enough. We've all been damaged enough. We've all been through enough pain. And often, you know, when we get hurt, we just go into reaction. You know, like the dog gets kicked, he goes into a reaction and he barks. But if you give the dog a piece of meat, then he's like more likely to let you in. So what I've tried to do with this whole Beyond Medicine range is to put, you know, substances in there which will kind of offset, you know, sort of like better shock absorbers so that we're able to, so it doesn't become such a bouncy experience or unpleasant experience. I mean, I've put like the light of Jupiter, the reishi mushroom, bee pollen, you know, just these beautiful things which are all about, you know, life and enthusiasm and renewal and regeneration and just feeling positive about oneself, about the world, about reality. So, you know, that's a strong part of this Beyond Medicine thing is like, well, let's give people this set of medicines which are going to make them feel good. It's still going to work through what needs to be worked through, but you know, the idea of as we walk down the street, we can be there with our best friend, skipping and whistling, right? But we're still processing this memory. We're still allowing it to leave the body, you know, and that for me, then people really get excited about the process. Then it's not like, oh, I've got to take this or like, oh, this medicine. No, this is something that's going to enrich my life. This is something that's actually going to be fun. And I mean, I talk a lot about this remedy liberation because it was the first one I made. It was for like 2 years. It was the only thing I had. But it had radical effects on people's lives as they realized, well, okay, I don't have to carry the stuff from the past. A lot of the stuff that was unresolved can now be resolved. I mean, this other guy had a weight problem and, you know, like a lot of weight, and he could never lose weight. He tried to exercise, he couldn't exercise. And it turned out that his best friend had died. And somehow in his head, he felt responsible. So this had basically stopped him from exercising or doing anything. And then when he took this remedy, he basically had a vision where actually the friend was there. It's like, look, it's actually not your fault at all. This is the situation. And then he was able to like let go of this guilt he was carrying towards the friend. And then he started to lose weight. He started gymming. He lost like 20, 30 kilos, you know, bang. Because all it was this hook, this belief that he was responsible. So it's almost like he was punishing himself by not allowing himself to live and to exercise. And when he was able to play out this story, obviously in a dream, right? Because, you know, certain things can't be played out in real life if the person's dead, but played out in a dream. But that feeling in the dream, if the resolution is there in the dream, people feel it's done. And then they can move on. Psychologically, they're able to move on from that situation. And sometimes it's a word or a phrase or a sentence or, you know, there was this other woman who took this and, you know, she felt a lot of, she couldn't let go of her mother. And in the dream, she was always seeing the mother and the mother was in the clouds and she was trying to talk to her through the clouds. She took the liberation and the mother came through the clouds, gave her a big hug. This is in the dream, the dead mother, gave her a big hug And in that moment, she was able to, oh, I finally got to give my mother a final hug. And then she was able to let go of the mother. So, you know, this is really very intelligent medicine, which is why I kind of call it beyond medicine, because it's moving to the realm.
Dr. Suzman, I am so fascinated by this liberation remedy that you spoke about, the one that you made first. So, in my journey of dealing with trauma and releasing blockages, trapped emotions, etc., I've gone through a whole number of different modalities. I first started off with meditation that helped to bring up my trapped trauma. Then I did yoga for many years. I did plant ceremonies. I then came across the Bach flower remedy range, which is under homeopathy, that helps with mental, emotional balancing. And that helped me quite a bit to release some trapped issues. And I found the most powerful method for me was to actually write letters about the incidents that affected me traumatically throughout my life. So I would write a letter to my perpetrator, be it my father, mother, friends, work colleagues, etc. And then you burn the letter, and I take the ashes and put it into the ground. And that for me was an amazing release. But that requires quite a lot of work, quite a lot of time and effort. But it sounds like this liberation remedy that you've created actually does everything for you. You take the liberation drops, and it goes and figures out what needs to be released, what traumas need to come out. And it sort of figures out by itself. I mean, this is the intelligence in the medicine. It figures out what order to go in. So it might deal with the most pressing issue and then go on to the next issue and the next issue, etc. I mean, this sounds way more efficient than all the trauma release work that I've been doing.
You know, when you look at where the stuff is stored, and I agree, writing letters and sending them off is great, and there's some emotional release in that. But here's where, you know, some people take the remedy at night, some people take it in the day, you know. But like when you take it at night, obviously there's more dream, a stronger dream component. But you know, what I saw is literally it went old girlfriends, old friends, family, and acquaintances. It literally over like 9 months, it worked through these categories. So obviously, in my own head, this was the most important stuff in my own head, the most important unresolved stuff. You know, I mean, obviously, old relationships, especially romantic relationships, are very fundamental to the psyche, and if they're unresolved, they're still going to play a major effect on everyone. But you know, what I came to realize is that like if there's just one remedy that people were to take of this, I mean, if they just took this one, just for themselves, just for their own peace of mind, to like clear the cache. I mean, there's another ingredient in there called Punch Agni, you know, 5 fires. So it's basically the story is like there's these 4 fires, right? They've been burning in India for the last 50 years, right? And in the middle, the fires never go out. In the middle is some guy. It was one original Guru Swami character who would chant the Smrityam Jaya mantra. It's a mantra of purification, right? But they've kept it going for the last 50 years, right? So it's basically the distilled essence of this mantra in the fires. The fifth fire is the sun, and they do it in the blazing sun. And they don't do it at night, but like basically day after day after day for 50 years, the fires have never gone out. And I got some of the ash from this, you know, and I made a remedy. I found a way to amplify frequency, you know, stronger than what one would normally be able to do with homeopathy, because I layer the frequency on top of itself, because I wanted to create something quite powerful that everyone could feel. Because, you know, the worst, you know, as my old homeopathic teacher said to me, the worst thing that can happen is that nothing can happen. You know, like even if you have a stronger effect, that's better than no effect. So I want to create remedies where, if you imagine like an atom, like the remedy is an atom, and normally the information's scooting around inside. So what I did is like I filled in all the space within these atoms, so they became like, instead of like a marble dropping in a pond, more like a grapefruit dropping in a pond, creating a much bigger effect. So the layering of the frequency allowed a much stronger message to be created and then, given to the cells so that the cells could receive it more powerfully. Because, and I've studied this, and I don't really understand the sensitivity thing with people. Like, what makes someone more sensitive? I mean, I've had mechanics who are super sensitive, right? And I've had people who think they're kind of super spiritual being very insensitive, So it's like, it's not even, I don't think it's necessarily even a mindset thing. I think it's just a biological setting. We all choose different attributes. If we were to choose ourselves, it's like, okay, I want more strength or more intelligence, more wisdom, more dexterity. We kind of balance it out. But this energetic setting is not something I've been able to really put my finger on. Like, how do you know in advance if someone's going to be sensitive to a homeopathic remedy? Some people are clearly very sensitive, and obviously, as you know, in homeopathy, they'll just smell the bottle, or they'll put it under their pillow, or they'll take one tiny drop, and that's enough for them. But what I've tried to do with these remedies, this beyond medicine range, is to create stuff that's strong enough for everyone to feel, so that everyone will get an effect. Obviously, some people more than others, but especially with this liberation, it's working at an area, a realm where people don't normally think of anything being able to act. I mean, like the writing a letter is a classic example of, okay, that's a good way to like let go of the emotions. But if we can actually have a dream, and we all know that dreams are so real, we wake up sweating. It's like, oh wow, did that just happen, or was it a dream? And you wake up, it's like, oh, it's a dream, but it still feels real. It feels very real in the body. Someone you love dies, and like you're in trauma. In the dream, you wake up, it's like it's just happened. It's real. The body feels like that. So this allows us to do a lot of the kind of backstory to our lives, programming, freeing up, so that when we come to the moment, we're a lot lighter in the moment. And I'm aware that people are quite, lazy. Inherently they're a bit lazy, and I get it. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of distractions. There's work and family, and and cell phones, and like entertainment, and there's a lot of things that take us away from being present and working on ourselves. And like when you say to someone they must meditate, they're like, oh, I don't have time. And like I hear all that, and it's like, okay, well, let's make the process as easy as possible for people to engage. Like, take the drops, and then let the smart medicine, because it'll go to wherever there is disharmony or dysfunction, or these broken arrows that are broken off unfinished stories, and let's just finish it for you, so you can actually be present in the moment without carrying this rock of memories. And I really believe that the world would be a much better place if everyone would do this just for themselves. It's like, well, who needs to carry, it felt like I was carrying like 20 ex-girlfriends, like somewhere in my field, like unresolved things, like, why didn't it work? Okay, maybe it would have been better if, like, oh my God, it's exhausting. Or family members you might be carrying, and often it's just a phrase, a sentence, an agreement, a gesture, a resolution, like the idea of giving the gift, and like, okay, I'll take the gift, but I still don't want to be friends. It's like, it's just like a completion, and often the anger we hold towards someone. And I mean, here's where it gets quite interesting. It works in another way as well. Like, there was this friend of mine, like, we're really good friends, and then he became a bit problematic and difficult, and he was living with me, and then he died he was struck by lightning in a cave in India while meditating, apparently. A crazy story, but I still remembered him when he was like behaving very badly here, and like, so whenever someone mentioned his name, I would go to like I would grind over the memory. I'd go into like a negative association, and then I thought, well, while I was taking the liberation, let's repattern this. So instead of like going to grind, let's think of one event where I really loved being with him as a friend. It was a beautiful event, and it was some random event. He dragged me up the mountain, saying like, okay, look upside down, look, all the buildings are upside down, but the one's right way up at the waterfront. It was a crazy image. Somehow he'd just seen this, and it was like, we both laughed hysterically at this. And I just put that memory in the place of him behaving badly, And whenever I heard his name, it would go straight to that memory. I would smile, and then instead of grinding for a couple minutes, I would just go into laugh and then move on. So this is the potential of repatterning of a lot of the emotional states as well that this represents. And this is what I'm talking about, the backstory. Like, okay, well, how do we get here? What's happening? What has our life been up until this point? And to be honest, going to school, like our life is full of like insults and slights and angers and like resentments and betrayals and like, oh, and often we need to forgive ourselves for a lot of these things, but often we need to just have closure to like, okay, well, it wasn't it wasn't a good event, but there was learning. So let's take the learning, and therefore we make the commitment to move on. But let's get rid of the emotional charge that's still resident there, so that we can actually get to the point where we're free. So that was liberation. I mean, it's a fantastic thing, and I strongly advocate everyone to take it because it can only make your life a better place. Because the invisible rocks that you're carrying are still rocks.
So, Dr. Suzman, I've got a bit of experience in frequency medicine or energy medicine. I have studied homeopathy and I came across radionics. Radionics is a machine that you can use to charge frequency into different substances. So, for example, I can use sugar pills or even a little bit of alcohol. I put it onto my radionics machine, I tune the dials, and I run the machine, and it charges that substance with a frequency. Now, the way I have understood it is it actually changes the shape or the molecular structure of the substance, the shape of the molecules. Like in Dr. Emoto's water studies, where he saw you could change the shape of water molecules, and he actually took pictures of these water crystals. So that's how I understand frequency to work. And I've seen so many amazing results with the radionics or frequency medicine I've given to my patients. But you spoke about layering frequencies and putting them on top of each other, I think, and amplifying the frequencies to make them stronger. So, how does that really work? I mean, I am familiar with potencies in radionics and obviously energy as well. But how do you go about amplifying the strength of the remedy that you produce?
I work a lot with distilled water. I mean, as you know, distilled water is like it's water that's blank, so it's hungry water. It's hungry for frequency. It'll absorb. It's like a sponge. It'll absorb whatever's there because it doesn't have a mineral basis. It's water it's a blank, and you can imprint upon it. Now, I mean, obviously, working as a homeopath for 20 years, often, I would make my own remedies, and that's a process of sometimes grinding them up. And, like this was before kind of radionics. So radionics has always been there, but like, like in homeopathy, they encourage people to actually grind them up or soak them, make a tincture. From the tincture, you then make the remedies. Um, so each one of the potencies represents like a line or a particular level of resonance where it's the higher potencies, they go further back into the 1Ms, the 10Ms, they go further back into the mind space, deeper into the past, like if you give a 50 of arnica, it's like that'll go back to all the old injuries you've ever had, like wow, and it'll clear that. I mean, it's take a dose of that, that's a trip, yeah. But so what I was doing with this is like, if you imagine each layer is a frequency, I was just kind of layering these frequencies on top of themselves. So I got to a point where it felt much stronger. So it's like but like multiple levels of that same frequency layered on top of each other in order to create a much stronger effect. Like in homeopathy, they're very specific about certain potencies, 30, 200, 1M, 10M, but like what I was doing is I was filling in a lot of the gaps and then mixing them all into like a single molecule so that, what you have to bear in mind is like, this is not traditional homeopathy. In fact, it's not homeopathy. I'm not looking at like cures like, that's homeopathos similar to the suffering. I'm not operating on this principle. What I'm doing here is like, I'm choosing very specific substances which are, um, I mean, in the case of the Navaratna, this is like it's a spiritual medicine. It's a karmic medicine. It can't really be I mean, if you were to take the pre-rings of those individual stones, you would get a whole mishmash, or almost like one of Swami's ones, like a mixture of things. But this was a medicine that was made with a lot of intention. It was created in order to fulfill an outcome. It was like a programmed thing already. So it was like a heat-seeking missile kind of thing. It was like designed to seek certain things out in the body, and it was with that intention. And I mean, only in India would they burn each mineral, each one of these stones 100 times, and then 9 of those. And it takes a year to make this Navaratna. It's a very laborious thing, as you can imagine, because you got to burn it and then burn it again and burn it again. I mean, it's the science of Rasha Shastra, which is the science of turning sometimes benign, sometimes like mercury. They burn different substances in order to rarefy them. It's basically Indian alchemy. It's their version of alchemy, and the purpose is to rarefy, to purify, to strengthen, to enhance, to alter, to bring out a deeper, more spiritual, for want of a better word, or karmic aspect of that medicine, or a medicine that has different, activity to, the physical material. So, a lot of the substances I've chosen. I mean, I've chosen holy waters. I've worked with Ganges water before. I've worked with holy springs. I've worked with, it's called Nairas. It's a Peruvian plant. It's the mother of all plants. But it was supposed to be like an immortal tree goddess who was tasked with creating life on, all plant life on Earth. So I've worked with substances like that as well, where, it's not the normal substances I'm working with. I'm working with I've kind of cruised around all through the world looking for these really exotic, powerful substances which have a life unto themselves, almost like a spirit into themselves. So it's like the body. And I mean, I've worked with mantras as well, like you mentioned before. You've taken the Vishnu one, the Vishnu immortality. I mean, that was, working with the mantras is very interesting, because you've got, like billions of people have chanted that Vishnu mantra in India. And I've got a friend who spent time he spent 20 years in India, and like he chants the mantras into water for me, right? So he like clears his mind, and then in his perfect Sanskrit, he'll chant the mantra into the water, and then he'll give the water to me. I'll make a remedy from it, amplify it. The mantras don't need to be amplified, interestingly enough. They stand as frequencies unto themselves. But using them as, in a way, flavors to bring about an aspect, because this is the other part of my work, is like, okay, well, there's the clearing aspect, right? This is the liberation. So we'll clear all that stuff, and then let's put certain archetypes back. I mean, you work with Lakshmi and Vishnu and Shiva and whatever. Like, okay, well, Vishnu is a good example, because I mean, Vishnu is the preserver, and he's all about like making things effortless. He, with a sweep of his hand, he creates the world or destroys or whatever. But when you take this Vishnu remedy, the immortality Vishnu, and I'll talk about the immortal jellyfish shortly, what comes up is the sense of ease of accomplishment. So it's like, okay, life just comes to me, things just happen, everything goes my way. So what I'm trying to do with a lot of these is to give people an archetype of like what it feels like for life to be easy. And they say it takes 21 days to set up a pattern, and a bottle will normally last you like 4 weeks. So it's enough time to set up a new pattern of behavior. So it's like, okay, well, let's try making my life super easy. Like, let's see what happens when things just go my way. And then the body learns what it feels like to have things go your way. And then it's almost like you've almost learnt it, so you don't need to keep taking it, because the body knows what it is. But more important is you've been able to break a bad pattern, because we all know, like, if we get caught in a negative spiral, it's just as bad. Like, oh, things are going badly, and this goes badly, and they crash the car, the dog gets sick, the child gets sick. That it's very easy to get caught in those cycles as well. But if we can just say, like, hang on, let's reverse that. Let's put in place these archetypes of positivity, of productivity, of things going our way. And And I'd like to bring up one of the other remedies as well. It's one of everyone's favorites as well for different reasons. It's called creation. Um, so with creation, I was like, and this goes right back to when I was a child. You know, I'd wake up as a child and I'd be in a bad mood. I'd wake up, it's like, why can't I wake up in a good mood every day? Like, why are my emotions like dice? You throw the dice and like, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe it's something else. It's like, I felt I had no control of this. And it's like, that just struck me as ridiculous. Like, why would I be such a victim of my emotions? It was just like, it just seems so random. And I don't know if this is everyone else's experience from childhood, but it just seemed unduly cruel, you know, like arbitrary. Is like, oh, well, today I'm going to put you in a fantastic mood, but tomorrow you're going to be in a terrible mood and like you're going to hate everything. And like, and maybe it was growing up in puberty or whatnot. But I thought, hang on, let me see if I can reverse engineer a good mood, right? And that's why I created creation. So the components, I broke it down, I reverse engineered to say, okay, so what do I want? What do I want to feel if I'm in a good mood? So I want to be open, like I want to be expansive, I want to be playful, I want to be engaged, I want to be happy. So let's find substances from all over the world and mix them together. And it's got like royal jelly and bee pollen and the light of Jupiter and the protea nectar and the Dyser orchid. All of these are like, and reishi to balance it all out. Like all of these put together form this, you know, like, okay, here we go. Here's a good mood. This is what it feels like. You take it, and then that ripples out through the body. So then oh wow, I'm feeling really positive. I'm feeling really optimistic, you know, today. And in that, we're more likely to have the right things happen to us, to meet the right people, to be in a good mood when we meet people. You know, when I started taking creation, I noticed I would just all of a sudden start talking to petrol attendants or the women at the cashiers at like Woolies or Pick and Pay. I would actually start engaging with these people before I'd be like, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm in my head and like, I'm thinking lofty thoughts or whatever the story was, you know. I actually became a better person because I was more engaged, because I was feeling more expansive and open. And this came as a surprise to me. It's like, wow, this is now a possibility of this medicine, that we can actually change the way we relate with the world. And you take it for 3 weeks and then you don't feel it as much, and then you stop for a month and then you notice things are starting to slide and you take it again. So we can obviously bolster it, but you know, once we've done it for 3 weeks, you start expecting things to kind of go your way. If you take creation and immortality, Vishnu, it's, you have to try really hard to have a bad day then, because things are primed to go your way. Basically, it's like on this level, Vishnu is moving the obstacles, and then here creation is putting you in a good mood. So it's like, you know, but someday, like for example, I made Immortality Kali, you know, from the Kali mantra, and it was quite interesting. I didn't, I mean, I thought I understood Kali as a frequency, but you know, I remember the one day I had to do my tax returns, and like, oh, you know, the feeling of you got to do your tax returns, your whole body constricts, and you know, this is the worst feeling in the world. And I took this immortality card, and it's like, okay, let's go. I'm looking forward to this. And it almost felt like I was like chewing through these tax returns and bank statements, and I was enthusiastic to engage with it, and it felt like I'm going to get through this. And I did it in the mood of like a victorious, you know, conqueror. Like, I'm going to chomp through these tax returns. So, you know, sometimes we want the more wrathful aspects. That's what Kali and Shiva represent, the more wrathful aspects to get us through difficult situations. So, you know, Lakshmi is there as well. Immortality, Lakshmi is there as well to give us this archetype of like, well, abundance. Like, what does it feel like in the cells to feel abundant? You know, and in that Lakshmi, there's creation. I've added that as well, and golden spiral. So Lakshmi is a big band production. You know, this big band of let's feel fantastic. Let's let flowers and money rain from the sky. Let's feel what it feels like in our body to have this as an event. Because I realized like clearing the memories is one thing, right? But a lot of what's wrong is people don't have the right archetypes running, or they've become so used to being on these kind of downward spirals or negative spirals that it's hard to break it and then spiral it up the other side. So a lot of it is the repatterning of a lot of the feelings we have in the world. And this was fundamental. But this brings me to, the third portion of this. So what I realized as well is like, okay, there's memory, right? But out of memory comes patterning, or it comes behavioral patterning. So imagine, the dog gets kicked, or like imagine we walk past a house every day and a dog comes out and bites us every day, right? Now, that's a memory, but out of that comes a response. So then we might become very fearful of dogs or very aggressive whenever we see a dog. So we've set a pattern up, right? A pattern in place of how we respond. And this is what we see a lot in homeopathy. We're dealing with the patterns of response to the situation. So, then I realized, well, I don't have the ability to give everyone the right remedy for that pattern, because they might need lacaninum or lysine, the remedies, those kind of things of feeling, or anger, they might go into nux, they might go into anger, to deal with that. So I wasn't able to obviously put the entire materia medica in like a little bottle, although I tried with panacea, but it didn't necessarily work. But what I could do was I could bring in these forces, which might be able to show us what the pattern was, or work with a lot of the patterning, just to give us perspective, or to allow us to step out of it, to step out of the response. And then stepping out of it, like I remember one time, like I woke up in the middle of the night and I was angry. I was like, and I just saw myself, I was like, wow, you're the angry man. I was like, what are you angry about? I didn't even know what I was angry at, but it was like, it was the pattern, and it was my father's pattern of getting angry at stuff, and I just picked it up as a child, I was like, oh, something goes wrong, get angry. And then I saw I was angry because my father was getting angry with my mother, and I wasn't able to protect my mother, and I felt bad. And then I got angry as a response. So whenever my daughter would get sick, I would get angry. And it's like, wow, that's so the wrong response to have. But, it was just a knee-jerk reaction based on that. But this allowed me to see this. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, so this is what I'm doing. Like, it wasn't even about the anger. The anger was just a way of feeling empowered as a child, because otherwise you feel disempowered and unable to help your mother, and then you feel guilty. So rather feel angry than guilty, because then you feel disempowered and emasculated. So that was my response. But then I was getting angry with my daughter, and like, wow, okay, now this, when she got sick and I wasn't able to find the right remedy. So often the pathway of like what's actually going on is like, wow, okay, this is curious. I don't know if I would have seen this by myself, because we often need that perspective. If we can step outside and look at ourselves and see ourselves, then we can actually do that. But it's very hard to step outside of yourself, because we're in the experience all the time. It's running, it's playing out, and we don't often get these moments, these shocks, these like instant enlightenment experiences where we're able to step outside and see ourselves. But with two remedies, redemption, and then there's another mantra. It's called the Ushnisha mantra. It's a Buddhist mantra. She's one of the deities of long life, but she contains wrathful and peaceful aspects. But this mantra, which is impure forever and victory over thought, this one and Naira, which is in redemption, are ways to take us out of the situation, right, and change it. With the mother of all plants, Naira, which is in redemption, what it did for me is, so I took it for like a week or so. I didn't feel that much, and then on the eighth day, in the dream, I destroyed my house. Like, I always dream of houses. It's like it's a homeopathic remedy, palladium, dreams of houses. But if the house is symbol of yourself, and like, okay, sometimes I'm redecorating the house, sometimes I'm fixing it, sometimes I'm renting out rooms, sometimes there's dark, scary parts. But in this dream, and this is the first time this ever happened, the house had been destroyed. So I was looking at all this rubble and thinking, do I have enough Lindt chocolate chip to pay the workers to build me a new house? Crazy dream stuff. But what this Naira did is like, okay, well, let's break your structure, this idea you have of yourself. Let's break it, turn it to rubble, and then you can have a new idea of what you want it to be, as opposed to what's just been given to you through ancestry or whatever, or archetypes. So it allowed me a new beginning. Now, by myself, I wouldn't have done that, right? I wouldn't have broken the house. I wouldn't have trashed it, because every cell in your body is like, don't destroy your house, because that's where you live. But, we often know that in healing, sort of hectic, cathartic things need to happen in order for a transformation or like a phoenix-like rebirth to happen. But when I did in my dream, the initial thing is like, oh, wow. But then I thought, oh, I'm actually free now. And in subsequent dreams, I was like, okay, different house. I was dreaming completely different house. Never dreamed of these houses before. And I was like, I don't like the curtains here, or too close to the highway here. Or I was able to say, well, I now have a choice in where I want to live, what this or this is. But the only way it would have happened is if this whole thing had been destroyed. So there was no going back. So then you have to move forward. So that's how the Nairal worked for me. The other thing with this Ushnisha, this mantra, and it's one of the longevity mantras. She's one of the deities, the Buddhist archetypes of longevity. But they say this mantra was created because some god, I mean, this is in Buddhist iconography, but like he didn't want to go be reincarnated. So he said to the Buddha, like, can you give me something to stop me having to go back becoming a cockroach and then a human and then back into this? I don't want to go through all the negative stuff. So they said the Buddha chanted this mantra, and it went out to the 8 directions. It touched the minds of 1,000,000 Buddhas and then came back into his mouth. And then he chanted this mantra, the Sushnisha Vijaya mantra. And the purpose of this mantra is to move people beyond death. It's often put at graveyards. It's a flag with the mantra on it. As the wind blows over the flag, it blows over the tombs, and it's supposed to liberate the dead or help them out of whatever realm they're in. If they're in a hell realm, it'll push them out of the hell realm into a higher realm. But what happens to us when we take it while we're alive is it basically, it felt like it was like tiger claws. It was just like clearing through like dreadlocks, like, okay, let's go through all the fields in the body. Let's clear all this clustered, matted hair, that's all tangled up. Let's go through it. It's got, on the one hand, it's got the peaceful aspect. On the other hand, it's got the wrathful aspect. So it's like, whether it's high, whether it's low. And this is what showed me the anger in the dream, that I was the angry man. I was like, here it is, this is you. Oh, wow, okay, well, now I can see it, now I can address it. So, these two forces, bringing these two forces in allow, the concept of, like descent from above, like a higher level of, a higher level of intervention, so that we can bring in something like I don't want to say like deity or anything like that, but like an archetypal force. Because from a Buddhist perspective, we're not playing with the gods. It's like all aspects of yourself. So you're bringing in an externalized force of yourself, which is able to kind of unplug you from whatever matrix you're in and free you to move into a different realm. So I mean, but it's possibly one of the most powerful things I've ever taken, this mantra, because it's completely thorough and absolutely relentless. But if you imagine, you plug into the network of Buddhas, enlightened beings, and they say, okay, well, please kind of help me sort out this mess I've made of whatever. They're going to go through like with a fine tooth comb and like literally comb through every memory, every subconscious and unconscious pattern we've acquired. In order to clear it. And I did it for about 6-8 months, and I felt amazingly clear. I mean, my point here, and it goes back to the original point, is like, this human story is so complicated, and we do so much work and we try so hard. It's like, and often we can't even see what we're dealing with. The problem is hidden under a rug in another room, in another house, in another country, and we've got to go there and find that, and like, oh, that's what we need to unplug this, and this was the thread we pulled, and that as this. So, it felt like this is the help we needed. This is like, okay, if we can enlist these benevolent archetypal forces whose only interest really is in clearing us of our patterning, then we can move forward. Now, the other piece here, and this I haven't really talked about, but it was a big part of my work, was the immortal jellyfish. So now, okay, so if you have memories, patterning, archetype, but then obviously the biggest cause of disease is aging, right? As we get older, systems stop working as well, things start to break down, there's less functionality, there's less integrity in the system. So I got a sample of this immortal jellyfish from Japan, and this thing is tiny. It's like that big. It's the size of your thumbnail, right? And I was able to make a remedy from that. It's curious in that if it gets old or it gets injured, it sends a message to its cells to begin this process of regeneration, renewal. Now, in the jellyfish's case, it'll literally turn the stem cells back into undifferentiated stem cells. It'll turn into a ball of jelly. It'll drop to the bottom of the ocean and then sprout again, like a flower that like gets old and then dissolves into liquid and then becomes a new flower. Now, but obviously we're not jellyfish. We don't have the DNA to do that, and we've got bones and children and cars, and like we can't just dissolve into juice and then bloom again. It's not going to happen. But what I was able to capture was this message of rejuvenation. So when you feed this message to the person, I mean, obviously amplify the frequency, but when you feed it to people, there's this sense of renewal, of life returning, of um, a new beginning, like a sense of, and we see this in cuts heal faster, nails grow faster, eyebrows grow faster, hair, I mean, okay, male pattern baldness, but like the hair I've got grows faster, everything works better because the cells they're getting the message that they're a younger, healthier version of themselves, and the message is to regenerate and to rebuild more quickly. So obviously organ systems work better, digestion's better, the organ systems just are healthier because they're younger. Um, so that was a lot of the work with the immortal jellyfish. So anything that has immortality and is a version of the jellyfish with the different mantras. So there's the immortality Vishnu, there's Shiva, there's Garuda, there's all these different remedies. But the reason I have so many iterations of this is that, like with anything, if we take something too much, it stops working because the body adapts to it. If you have coffee every morning, you don't really feel it anymore. But like if you change, you have 3 coffees in a row, you'll feel it because it's a stronger thing. So all of these represent different frequencies of the immortal jellyfish to begin this process. And what people noticed is that they had more energy, they had more life force, they felt more inspired. Um, and there's a whole range of these immortalities, but it allowed me to explore these archetypes as well, to explore um, the different states of that we might want to engage with. I mean, I mentioned the Vishnu, the Lakshmi, the Kali, but there's Garuda, which gives us this overarching perspective, but it's quite stimulating as well. There's Ganesh and Vajra, that's removing obstacles. That deals a lot with the emotions and clearing the emotions out.
Yes, so Dr. Suzman, I wanted to comment about some remedies of yours that I've been taking. So there's a remedy called End of Aging, and I took that for I think 2 months, and it was quite fascinating. I noticed that I actually stopped procrastinating. So I had so many things to do, there's only a limited number of time, and instead of worrying about the thing, how am I going to get it done? Oh, it's so much work. I actually stopped all of that once I started taking your end of aging remedy, and I just started getting the stuff done. And I became quite efficient and got through quite a lot of work. And it's amazing. You mentioned the Kali remedy of yours does something similar. How does that actually work? I'm very curious to understand. I also wanted to mention that I've also started taking your Vishnu remedy. Vishnu, I think, is channeling or has the energy of the Vishnu entity, which is supposed to be more playful, more fun, more childlike in a way, maybe more present. And I have noticed that I am a little bit more present. I've always been lots of fun. I mean, I do a lot of games and activities and fun things with my children. So that's been quite simple for me. But how does this actually work? And maybe you can tell us about the end of aging, because I think it has something about an immortal jellyfish. So it actually helps to regenerate your body because the immortal jellyfish is able to do that by itself. So these are fascinating remedies I would like you to elaborate on.
Well, I think I've covered most of those. There's the clearing, obviously, the liberation. Then there's the reflection, and the reflection is the ability to see ourselves. So there's that, and that's the Ushnisha and the redemption. Then there's the archetypal aspect, like the installation phase, where you actually get to install new, in a sense, archetypes or programs. I wouldn't even say they're new, because they're just things that are inherent in our psyche. They're the aspect of preservation or destruction or clearing, or these. It's just remembering these states, and then the subconscious and unconscious, like dealing with that. Now, I haven't talked about that so much, because that's obviously something we often just see in dreams, if even, and it's in passing and it's in vision. And where we come to realize that a lot of our action is inherited and unconscious, but a lot of this is to bring the unconscious to the conscious, so that we're aware of what we're doing subconsciously and unconsciously. If we can be aware of it consciously, then we can actually alter it, and then it can go back into the subconscious and form a new pattern and then reflect back out. So, I mean, a lot of this is all about empowerment. I mean, it's empowering the human to take control of their situation. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to give the power back to people, so they could actually play with their own psyche, and make the world a better place for themselves, without necessarily having to externalize too much with therapists and be dependent on them. The journey of liberation, for one, is possibly the most personal thing you'll ever do. It's all about you. It's not about anyone else. It's interesting you talk about the end of aging, because what I did with the end of aging is it's some of the jellyfish, but then I worked with the Norse runes as well, and then 3 different versions of gold. So there's the burnt gold, there's a liquid version of gold, and then there's the actual gold leaf itself. But this is working with ancient alchemical stuff like the mind, the body, and the spirit of the gold. But when you combine them all together, you're able to deliver a very powerful message to the body of regeneration. And what came out of the end of aging range was what you're describing there is the Jing. The Jing is a Chinese term for life force. But part of what Jing is our ability to do things. So, like the procrastination you were talking about, that's we've almost learned this as we get older. We're like, I still, when I started taking end of aging, because like I'm a single father, I'm here with my daughter by myself, and like, like often it'll be like, oh, got to do all the stuff, take child here, do this, and then come back and then cook dinner as well after a full day. And before that, I'd be like, oh no, I've got to cook dinner for this time with the end of aging. It's like, yeah, sure, I've got the juice to do it. I'm not going to procrastinate. I'm just whip through it, and then, oh, dinner's made, done. It was like, it wasn't an effort, that sense of like, oh, I'm procrastinating, or it's a hassle, I don't want to do it, or it's an effort, or whatever. When people start taking end of aging, all of a sudden their like to-do list was just like wiped out. Like, okay, there's no more to-do list, because you just do it, and then it's done, and you're on top of it, and something comes up, and you nail the mold straight away, you get rid of it. So there's no longer this backlog of things you kind of feel you have to do or should do, and then the kind of foot dragging that people feel as a result of having too many things to do. We almost like look forward to do stuff, and this is all a function of Jing, because as we get older, normally after age 30, our life force starts to diminish a bit. I mean, it can obviously be regenerated with stuff like Tai Chi and Qigong, and obviously meditation, various practices like exercise or whatever. But, it's our capacity to do things in the world. I often see with my child, she'll be like, okay, let's do it, and just get up and want to do it. Like, now it's like, but 8 o'clock at night. We can't do this now because it's like it's not possible. But they have the energy, they want to do it, and it's there. And to have that feeling of to be youthful and like, yeah, of course, let's do it. Like, what's stopping us? This idea of like what we should be or could be doing, or what we normally do at this time, or like how we should be feeling at this time. It's like when you take that, you just wipe it out, you pour a healthy dose of Jing, life force, into the body. Then it's like, oh, I've got the capacity, and I've got the will, and I've got the desire, and I've got the juice for it. So to do it is not a mission. I like it's 10 o'clock at night. Let's go do something. Whatever. I can still do it. So this is obviously what you were feeling, and I've got like 4 in the end of aging range. And this is, I mean, end of aging and liberation. I mean, those two, if people take nothing else, they'll get massive benefit from both of them. I mean, obviously, there's huge benefit in the whole system, and the idea is like, I mean, coming back to your original question, we clear, we remove, we install, we add, certain archetypes, we reflect, and then the rest is just the journey. But then, it's like, if you're driving from here, from South Africa to Egypt, to Dakar or whatever, okay, well, let's get the car set. Okay, let's get a spare wheel. Let's put some supplies. It feels like once we do this, then we're equipped for the journey. We know that our vehicle is solid, our mind, our physical is solid. We've gotten rid of all the excess junk we would normally have to carry, and we can actually begin the journey. But more than that, we feel like we've got the juice for the journey. We've got the desire to do it. This is what happened with a lot of people on end of aging, was they were like, oh, all of a sudden I've taken up, I want to study Chinese medicine, or I'm going to do this. They felt like they had the energy to do the stuff they kind of wanted to do, but felt too tired, or they're going to start a business. It's like, yeah, I feel like I've got the juice to start a business. When we're starting businesses, like it's a lot of work, and like sometimes we just feel like, oh no, I don't know if I've got the juice to do this. Especially after we've done it 3 or 4 times, it's like, oh, do I have the energy to do this anymore? And like, but if conversely, if we feel we do have the energy to do it, then it's effortless. And this is what I wanted to give to people. Like, here's a second chance. Like, okay, you've always wanted to do it. Like, well, now you got the energy. You feel like you can do it. Go out and do it. You've got the wisdom because you've made the mistakes. But now that's normally the problem. We get to a certain age, we've got the wisdom to do it, but like we don't have the juice. When we're young, we've got the juice, but we don't have the wisdom, and we spend the time getting to the wisdom and like making mistakes and learning things. But if we have the juice and the wisdom in our 40s or 50s or whatever, then of course we can just engage with it. And then that's what I wanted, a second chance for everyone to like to finish off what they feel like they always needed or wanted to do. So this really is quite a comprehensive system, in terms of what it offers people. And it's a way for people who, I mean, this in no way diminishes any of the other aspects of the spiritual path, or the meditations, the yogas, the breath work, all the other, in no way, it just works with that to enhance it. I know people who take, they'll take some liberation, they'll do breath work, and they'll say it's so powerful because all these emotions are coming up, and as they're breathing, they're working through it, or they'll put it in a cacao ceremony, and it works much deeper. Or I've even got a psychologist who'll give someone a dose of liberation before they actually go into a session. It's like, hey, have your dose, and then they can bring stuff up, and then they can go deeper, because it just allows access to these places which normally are sealed. And they're sealed for good reason. But if we can make it a safe space, like in the liberation, okay, let's go back, let's deal with it. It's not going to be as painful as you thought it was. It was painful at the time, but now time has passed. Let's make peace with it. Let's move forward, and then we can have a new pattern, a new life. So. This is really what this system is about. That's why I called it Beyond Medicine, because it's like, there's this, okay, problem, put out the fire, problem, put out the fire, like, and it's not like this is the be all and end all of solution either. It's like people still have to do the work, they still have to go on the journey, but it's a set of tools. The image I have of it is like, sometimes it's a friend walking next to us, sometimes it's a stick to climbing the mountain, sometimes it's a boat to cross the river, sometimes it's a set of gliders to help us glide over something. It's like, it's whatever we need at that time, based on where we are and the situation we're in. And we can obviously speed it up and slow it down. If we've got a lot going on in the world or in life, we obviously can't be going too fast. We can take it more slowly. I've got remedies based on the blue lotus and tranquility, which will sedate people, calm them down. Cloud nine, which is just it's a remedy which puts people in this kind of euphoric space. It's using oxytocin and whatever, just to give people the sense of like, I'm held, I'm loved, I can have a bit of time out for my nervous system in the middle of the day, just to de-escalate us for, because this is the other piece, is the nervous system, because if the nervous system is not calm and relaxed, it doesn't matter what you feed it. It's going to be like knee-jerk reaction. It'll kick it out. It'll just to protect itself at all. So often, a lot of what this work is with the tranquility and the cloud nine, and some of the more calm ones, even the creation and the Lakshmi, the golden spiral, it's about making the nervous system feel safe so that we can then receive. Because if the nervous system is not safe, we're in flight or fright, and we're kicking out, and we're not accepting any help. Everyone's seen like a kid who's like freaked out, and you try to give them something, and they'll just throw it away because their nervous system's overwrought. But if you can calm them down, like my daughter used to get like really angry, and then I wouldn't even be able to give her some blue lotus to calm her down, so I just squirted at her like from a distance, or go to her mouth, and then she'd be like, oh, da-da, or 5 minutes later, it would completely change her frequency just because it would take the nervous system, bring it right down, and then they would have a new experience of the moment. So that's obviously very important as well. Just one more thing I'd like to mention is like I do have a physical. Yeah, let me just mention this. Then I do have a physical range as well, which is made from the protein from the immortal jellyfish. I was able to isolate that, and that's in a tooth product I've got, Miracle Tooth. It's in a cream I've got. It's in, it's turtops. You can actually apply it to the skin. Add it to cream. So it's like a more physical thing where we can apply it in a targeted manner to certain areas in the body, as opposed to taking the drops where it goes systemic and then it just goes where it needs to go. Sorry, you're saying?
So, Dr. Suzman, I just wanted to comment in some experience I have had with the energy medicine. There have been a few patients that I've given to the remedy to, and it's just frequency medicine. So, just frequencies that I've created using the radionics machine. And a couple of patients have then started getting a deep detox process. One patient actually had such a severe detox, he had a rash break up all over his skin just after a few days. And obviously, I understood what it was. We discuss it in homeopathy. We call it a pull out, which is where toxins, pathogens, and all the rubbish and gunk in our body starts getting pulled out of our body. In this particular patient's case, it happened so quickly that it broke out on his skin, and it was a huge discomfort for him. And he was complaining about how awful he's feeling. And, the doctors have no idea what a deep detox is. So, in your remedies, what can actually go wrong? Have you actually experienced any patients complaining about the detox being too fast and wrecking their lives, for example?
I've had very few side effects from this. What people sometimes experience is that the process is going too fast. Not so much an aggravation like the guy with the skin, but it's like, imagine we can take the pressure off a pressure cooker slowly or let it all out in one thing. And, obviously we want to let it out so it doesn't blow up the pot. But in this way, people can just take less of them, and that's why there are these positive ones like the blue lotus, the creation, just to soothe the nervous system. But I've had very few negative reactions, almost none, to be honest. And some of those that I have had have just been people running the process too fast. That they think they're tough, they'll take liberation 3-4 times a day, and then there's just the whole life comes dumped into their subconscious, their conscious, and they're like, too much. It's like, well, they want to be tough, or they want to think they're a big dog or whatever, so they do that. But they don't realize that the mind is like it's quite a delicate thing, and it goes at its own speed. And So what I generally recommend to people with this is if there's something that might be considered like too much or an aggravation, I get almost no physical aggravations. It's more like mental aggravations. It's like just slow it down. Slow down the process, take less drops. Instead of taking 7 drops, take 1 drop or 2 drops. Take it every 3 days, every second day, every fourth day. Or just add something like Cloud9 or Blue Lotus or Tranquility, something just to calm the process down and to realize that we can only do so much at any one time. And if we exceed that, then we go into this nervous system override thing, which we don't want to be doing. And then the nervous system will almost say like, no, I need time out to process. So generally, a lot of these problems are sorted by just slowing the process down, like taking it to realize that at this time in our lives, we can manage a certain amount of processing or old stuff coming back. But if we have more, it might be overwhelming. We might have too many family commitments, or we just need more time to process it, or we need a quiet space. But people don't always have a quiet space. They don't often have a calm environment. So we have to take this into consideration as well, that we need to ensure that people are able to deal with it in a way that is usable for their life. Yeah. So yeah. So yeah, no real aggravation.
Thank you, Dr. Suzman. That has been an absolutely wonderful discussion. You've shared so much information about your range of products that you have. To the viewers out there, please go check out Dr. Suzman's website. It's called beyondmedicine.co.za. The link is below the video here. You can check out his entire range of products. There are so many products for different types of remedial healing. And this is truly a range that is beyond medicine, beyond the normal conventional type of healing of treating symptoms or dealing with issues. These medicines that Dr. Suzman has created have a higher intelligence, and he's custom built them using frequencies and gems and entity energy and a whole range of different technology, I would say, has been put into his remedies to help you. They have their own intelligence, so they know how to go about getting you back to balance or giving you the right type of vibe, energy that you need. It's truly amazing, and we really appreciate your time. So thank you so much for joining and sharing your knowledge and your products with our viewers.
Totally. Always happy to chat. Yeah.
So, Dr. Suzman, we hope to chat with you again in the future about this topic more in depth. But we've come to the end of our show. Till next time. Ciao for now.
Thank you, Deepak. Cheers.